Abibifahodie. Today is Saturday, August 29th, and we have with us, as you see on the screen, Raising Awareness, Past, Present, Future, a phenomenal book by our esteemed elders, Olatunji Mwamba, Seba, and Baba Mkuu Mzee, Seba. We have in attendance Brother Obasi and Brother Boukman. We're just going to discuss this book. We've been through it, and we just want to get a little bit more insight as a way to let the viewers know, those who haven't read the book yet, those who have read it, just get a little bit more insight into the purpose and the idea that birthed this phenomenal piece of literature. So I want to welcome the elders first and foremost. Baba Olatunji, Baba Mkuu, welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to come here.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share for that. We've done.
All right, so Obasi, again, if you have anything to add, just go ahead, raise your hand, or you can jump in. First thing on my list, I want to thank you both for what we call advancing the research. The book, Raising Awareness, Past, Present, and Future. Just looking at the references in the back, what we might call a bibliography, there are literally hundreds of sources. So I can only imagine the amount of intense time and dedication it took to prepare this work. You cited some notable scholars, Chukwuneye Kamalu, Obanga. I saw Job about 8 times, Yosef Ben Yochanan, just down the line, Wayne Chandler, so many. This is a lot of work. George Jackson, Kwame Jeche. So I'm gonna start. All right, starting the recording back up again, and I want to ask you, in advancing the research that you've done toward this work, I mentioned some of the scholars that you referenced in the book. Why was this important to you to advance the research that these many scholars and elders have done, that you glean so much wisdom from?
Yeah, we have a very fortunate opportunity in this day and time to build on the works of, noted scholars who are now deceased, or our ancestors, and some are still around, who are still doing quality work. You mentioned some of them in the beginning. I mean, for me, a lot of the concepts, it's not so much that I've taken specific and individual ideas from these scholars. The concepts that are congregated by all of them, the congregated concept of nation building, the congregated concept of community health, and all those things. I concentrate on those things: community health, psychological health, emotional health. Those are the things that we actually have to concentrate on as a community, and firstly as individuals, and then as a community. I thought that when me and Olatunji first started talking about putting this book together, we thought that these themes and concepts were discussed by Dr. Ben, John Henrik Clark, and Dr. Robinson, even Chancellor Williams, Job, these guys talked about individual emotional, psychological health, and which is the gateway to community health. However, whether they were so immersed in trying to get as much information to the public as they could, sometimes the message can become not convoluted, but it can become so technical, and so much information comes, can come so fast to the people that it kind of goes over their heads. So we decided to take a simplistic approach and take the conceptual congregated ideas and put it together in this book, Raising Awareness, Past, Present, and Future. So even though you see a lot of scholars in the bibliographies, and more specifically, the ones that we either quoted or used their source material in the chapters that I did and that Olatunji did, all of those people, all those scholars, all those noted ancestors contributed to the conceptual basis of the book. So the idea of presenting this information in as simplistic a way as possible was our goal. And this is the reason why it took nearly 2 years for us to finish it, because we started getting too technical. We started putting things out there in a way where people, we said, you know what, we need to slow ourselves down and really talk our way through this information as though we're having a conversation with people.
Yeah.
And because acting like you know it all, and thinking that, I'm the smartest guy on the block, that's nice, and it's good, it's noteworthy. But the most important part is the communication for people to understand. Now, I'm looking at, Brother Boukman, I'm looking at you, Kwasi, I'm looking at you, Brother Obasi, and I think Olatunji is going to be on here in a minute. I can sit and talk technical with you guys all day long. And I think Olatunji is trying to say something now. Know that we can't go by, your opinion, your suspicion, your idea, especially when it comes to educating the people. I think what happens is we can't substantiate any information we should be able to substantiate any information that we're, projecting or teaching or transmitting to our audience, no matter who that audience may be. It's important that when they get the information, that it is, number one, it's not corrupted by our emotional attachment to the information.
Right.
I think I might have mentioned that in that section that you're talking about. So once we attach ourselves emotionally to the subject matter, then we become suspect to our own inner demons, our own prejudices, and everything like that. So to simply say that we need the evidence and to research scientifically and try to get as much empirical evidence as you can, documented evidence that you can from many, many sources, that is really the quality control element of teaching and transmitting quality information. It's really strictly just a quality control mechanism. We have to remember that as a quality control mechanism, because we can be our own worst enemies, because nobody's perfect. We do have a tendency to have our own beliefs about certain things, our own opinions about certain things. And if we're not careful, that'll transfer over into what we're trying to express and communicate to our audience. I hope I answered your question.
You did, and I think that's what's so important, with doing the title of the book, with raising awareness. This is what I think so is vital, and this is why I think this book is amazing for any age, because as you and I talked, and I told you, I said, well, first thing y'all did, as Nana Malcolm would say, you made it plain. You made it plain. But something else that you tapped on that I like, you talked about the deficit of maturity. And back to what you were just speaking on when you were talking about this type of emotionalism. And we see that as Baba Olatunji was speaking on, where he said all of these debates that go on. And you start, you see the decline of critical thinking, because it's like, well, my grandmama said, we were Indians and on 180 Blackfoot. And, there's no real critical thinking analysis. And that's why I think this book set the tone for what Baba Olatunji done. It's kind of like you guys were just bouncing off each other like a duo. But I think this chapter sets the tone and lays the foundation of you got to do some critical thinking. And Baba Olatunji hits with an uppercut in a lot of his chapters. So you can't be emotional for what you're about to read. And that's what I love. And I think that it is going to do wonders once this book spreads around.
Yeah, you hit it perfectly on the head. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Much like the individual needs to take a look at themselves, take a real deep introspective look at themselves, and do a quality control sweep of themselves before we can think about going into community, do any kind of quality work, especially nation building. You need to be able to be an open vessel to new information or different information. And when I finished setting the stage, this is exactly what me and Olatunji wanted to do, the elder wanted to do, was that you needed to set the foundation, just like with any house. It had to be a solid foundation where now, when this sledgehammer comes, and when this hand with the talcum powder comes across the face, and leaves a big white cloud of powder around your head, you're gonna be able to say, you know what, I get it now, I get it. But you can't take it personal. You cannot take it personal. But yeah, you hit it right on the head.
Let me see if I can get Baba Olatunji back in. It looks like he logged in on another device back in.
Something I want to talk about while we still with Baba on Baba Mkuu right now. Another thing that I love and I really want to talk about is your 6 levels of critical thinking. I don't want to say where did the inspiration come from, or I guess I do want to ask you that. Again, another heavy part of the book that makes it simple, that comes from the most simplistic version of just thinking with knowledge and ending up with action in full color. I guess I do want to ask you once again, why did you feel the need to stress that? And what were you thinking when you kind of put that together?
Well, I want to preface that my answer with this. That particular chapter on critical thought actually goes back like 10 years. I am, well, right now in my present profession as a property manager with the government, with the state of New Jersey. I don't do any teaching anymore. But when I worked in the healthcare side of the business, in long-term care, hospitals, nursing homes, and things of that nature, actually in any industry that you can think of, in property management, that's where I worked at. I did it for almost 40 years now. But I was a training manager for Fortune 500 companies in the 80s, the late 80s, all through the 90s, and then into the early 2000s. That's all I did. I traveled the East Coast. I went from account to account, And I was a training manager for several companies, and during different years. So this whole thing about critical thought has been something that I perfected over many years. So 10 years ago, I started putting down a protocol about it, and I had it in writing. Now, since then, you can find a lot of material on critical thought, and those those levels of critical thought is basic for the industry now. And you can actually look it up in Wikipedia and see that exact same information. So, but like I said, I put it in a practical sense when I actually used it and made people better thinkers as managers. You have to think on your feet when you're managing people. And I actually was pretty successful at making people better thinkers. So I knew that this was going to come in handy when the time came for me to actually write a book for the African community. But the colors, the colors of thought, thinking in gray, thinking in white, thinking in black and white, and then actually thinking in full color, those are just a way of simply breaking things down so people can understand where they may be, in their thought process, in their development of their thought process. That's simply really all it is. There's nothing that I myself, I have my own individual specific way of presenting the information, but it's standard industry practice. And you look it up anywhere and you'll see that information anywhere. But there's an article that I actually cite in the book where you can go, you can see that exact same information. But again, it's all about how you present the data, how you communicate the information, and that's the most important part of it.
I got a question for Baba Olatunji, and I'm glad you're back in now.
Yeah.
So in the work, you guys kind of tackle different topics, and you covered a lot on the Bible, Islam, the Moors in particular, and also some of this indigenous stuff that kind of floats around. Why are these topics important to discuss and critique?
Well, for me, in my analysis of it, as I began to assess it, it all boiled down, all of this boils down to the same thing. Self-hate in being African, in being black. Because when they brought us here and chained us and enslaved us, one of the things that they made sure to do was to impose a self-hate on us, both collectively and individually, as a race of people. And then not only that, but to make sure they entrenched it within their own population as well. And so what I found was that we see this continuous trying to address that, but the way we try to address it is by coming up with other ideas and or philosophies, ideologies, etc., to make us feel good while denying that we are what we are. And so this is where you see the Moors saying stuff like, I'm not black, I'm a Moor, and yet the word Moor means black. You know what I mean? You have the religious folk clamoring to be included in a group with a group of folk who hate them. And so what we're doing is running away from ourselves and our ancestral lineage and heritage to be with other groups of people. The Muslims, if you convert to Islam, they're trying so hard to be Arabs, so now the original Arabs is black. the Hebrew Israelites, the original Hebrews, you know, it's all, you know, so all of these, you know, they see positive things in what these other folks have done, and they don't see any positive, you know, contributions that we've made to civilization, when in fact none of those other religions would exist had not we made the contributions that we've made as a race of people in all areas of people activity. And so that's why I wrote what I wrote, because I started getting this constant, I ain't black, I ain't this, I'm Muslim, Islam always existed, all kinds of craziness that can't be proven, you know, in any way, shape, or form. So that's and then on top of that, you had the real hate word, the N word, which just totally disgusts me. You know, I cringe every time I hear a black person use it. I rid myself, and see, I guess part of this is because, and I'm not bragging or anything. This is just a fact. You know, I've been disciplined in this and doing this since I was 20 years old. I'm now 66 years old. And so I've been doing this for 46 years.
Wow.
And so, and even before that, when we used the N-word, it was used, as we always say, them is fighting word. You know what I mean? So we didn't use those words it was never a term of endearment. And so when I hear people say, well, y'all had it in movies back in the 70s. Yes, we did. But who wrote those scripts? Did we write them?
Well, I have to apologize because every once in a while I still use it, mostly to address certain levels of ignorance and stupidity. And I understand why some people do. And what I would say is that for me, it was easy for me to come up with another word than to use a word that our mortal enemies created to denigrate, terrorize, and demean us. So that's the reason you'll never hear me use it.
And I don't think Kwasi is alone, because I say, Baba, I use it, but in that same way to characterize the behavior that has circulated around that word.
Right. No, trust me, I understand, but I'm just saying that at a certain point, that's what we have to get away from it, because I always, I don't know if y'all got to that chapter yet, but I make a real strong argument for why we need to stop using it. I don't want to give everything up,
right?
But it's based in history. This whole the word Naga, I deal with that. The word Nigus, I deal with that.
Yeah.
So all I've done the research. So that's why I know that I'm taking the position that I've taken, and the chapter that I wrote is correct. As we used to say back in the day, no airing.
Something I liked about it too, Bob. And like you said, I'm not gonna give too much up because they're gonna have to, purchase the book to get
absolutely
information. But one thing I do want to talk to you about, Baba Olatunji, is you tackling the etymological word of, they keep saying, we keep hearing this, and I heard Nick Cannon make that same error in his interview with Professor Griff, and I'm not gonna say I was surprised that Professor Griff didn't correct it, because I have my views on that. But this whole thing that we keep dealing with, that Africa's being named after a European, Africa's being named after a European, and I was so thankful to you for dealing with that.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's so, you know, it gets thrown around a lot, so it looks like it's small. But in hindsight, it's doing so much damage, especially when you look at the state of where we are in social media. It's doing so much damage to the 12-year-old. It's doing damage to the 15-year-old. It's doing so much damage to the 21-year-old that I'm seeing people that hate say, I hate Africa. I can't stand it. It's named after. And what I love about it, you compare people, you know, ones like me, ones like brother Boukman, ones like my brother Kwasi. You compare us to deal with this. That way we don't have to deal with scatterbrain and Google babies like Nick Cannon. But I really like that part that you pointed out in the book, and you dealing with that.
Right. Well, I you know, what I was trying to do was to, you know, I wanted to deal, because I had been, like I said, I had been, you know, dealing with that whole thing. You know what I mean? I'm trying to see if I'm still trying to get this screen up, but I can't seem to get it up so that y'all can see me. All it's got is my name.
Well, another topic I wanted to kind of dig into was integrity, which kind of ties into, you know, the way that we address each other and the way we identify ourselves. There's a whole chapter in the book on integrity, but there are other instances throughout the book where integrity becomes a topic of discussion. I want to read a little bit from that chapter. This is page 33. And it says, and this is Baba Mkuu's chapter, I'm concerned about the apathy and the lethargic attitudes towards true nation building. It does not have to be all-encompassing in the macro and scope, but if done in the micro first with ourselves, in our homes, and then in our communities, we'll experience that which has eluded us for so long. Baba Mkuu, could you just expound on that a little bit? You gotta unmute yourself. Baba Mkuu, you're muted. There you go.
I got it. Yeah, that was huge for me. I thought that was something that I needed to spell out right in the beginning, before I started expressing my thoughts and laying out the content. Like I said, I don't know whether we caught that part of the recording where I talked about the aggregated concepts of our ancestor scholars and our living scholars today, where this is how the book is conceived, where we want to talk about the concepts, not to get into all this individual data and just throw stuff at people all the time. It was important that we encapsulate it and be as conceptual as we can, so people can get it, make it as simple as possible. The apathy and the lethargy of nation building, that comes around, that happens because people don't really know what nation building is. They don't have a clue. If we took the time to listen to Baba Molima Baruti, that's all he talks about is nation building. He talks about nation building all the time. But how many people do we? I know I've seen Brother Obasi in his class, because we've taken his class, we've taken several classes with the brother. And he talks about that all the time, nation building. But nobody really seems to care about nation building, because you know what? You haven't did any personal building.
So would you say that's the foundation of nation building, is building self?
Exactly right. And that's what that sentence, that paragraph is all about. You know? Absolutely. So even before I even sit down and try to explain what nation building is, I can put Molima Baruti in front of you and have a lecture on that. I can bring the brother who wrote about nation, Brother Akoto, who wrote a great book on nation building. I can put him in front of I can put him in front of 1,000 people. But if nobody in that group of 1,000 people are working on personal integrity and working on the nation building within themselves, they could give two. I hate forget the language.
Go ahead, say it.
They can give two shits about what nation building is.
Yeah.
Because we're too busy chasing the ghosts of capitalism.
Say it again.
Because you can't catch a spirit. You can't catch a ghost. But we're always chasing that dream, man.
Wow.
You know. So yeah, that is basically it. The microcosmic view that I actually talk about later in the book about the true nation building that we have to do.
Yes.
The cosmology of nation building, which it's not as deep as people may think if you just take the time to try to understand it. You know, Dr. Foucault talks about that, the Bakongo, Kikongo cosmology of the geopolitical, eco-political, communal organization of African tribes and how they deal with their children and all those other things. We can build a nation if we use some of those concepts. Obviously, we need to modernize it.
Yeah.
But nation building is not going to happen until you learn how to build up that personal nation within yourself. That's just the bottom line.
Baba Olatunji, you want to follow up with anything from that?
Absolutely. Well, and what I would say, and you know, because Mkuu just laid it out real clear, but to add to it, the only thing I would say is that when we begin the process of dealing with honesty and integrity, then we can build up good character. See, because somewhere we lost sight of the fact that I have to be right all the time. See, and what I say is I don't want to be right, I want to be correct. And so when you want to be correct, what you do is you're always trying to make sure that you are. So that's the difference. See, when you're right, I'm right. But when you're correct, you're always working towards correctness, knowing that you could possibly be wrong yourself. So what you're doing now is you work towards that, and you do that by virtue of looking at yourself and honestly, admitting that, that you have stuff that you need to work on. See? And so whatever that stuff is, none of us are perfect. But as I always say, we strive for perfection, knowing full well we shall never attain it. But that it is in that striving that we become better human beings. Because if we're striving, we're always trying to be better today than we were yesterday. And we will be better tomorrow than we were today if we keep working at it. See? And if we honestly look at ourselves. And so the problem is that we have people that are so busy, they're so caught up in their ego, and they're so narcissistic that they can't look inside themselves and admit when they are wrong. Now, and what I try to do, like for instance, there have been several times, not a lot, but there have been a few times where I would put up a post or something, and I would find out that I had been in error. And what I did was I would do a post and say, I put up something earlier, I was incorrect, that information is false, I want you know what I mean? Because I don't have any problem. I don't have a problem with admitting that I'm wrong if I'm proven so. That's not a problem for me. See? And so when you build yourself up like that, it makes it easy to move away from incorrect stances that you might take. And you move, because remember, if you're trying to be correct, then you're always self-critical. That's the problem. Is being honestly self-critical of oneself. I give you. I'm hoping I don't take too much time, but I want to give you a personal example of something that happened to me when I was very young. And I had just really started becoming conscious. I'm standing in the neighborhood where I was living at in the projects. We on the playground, and I'm kicking. I'm just running. And it was a brother that was about 7, 8 years old. I think it's about 6 or 7 years older than me. That came through that had done much more research than me. He had actually been doing a lot of reading. I had only been in this at this point probably less than a year. And he asked me a question, and it was a question that I felt I should have known the answer to, but I didn't. And so I admitted to him that I didn't know the answer. And I swore that day that was never going to happen to me again. And so what I've done is I constantly study, restudy, I sit back, I analyze, I'm critical, self-critical of myself. And but I'm stern and I'm firm because as a man and as I've grown to become an elder, I have to be, because I want men to be men. And so I demand the best of men because I demand the best of myself.
Indeed. We appreciate that. We got about 10 more minutes left. Again, for our viewers, we're discussing the new publication by Baba Olatunji Mwamba and Baba Mkuu Mzee, book Raising Awareness. Yeah, Raising Awareness, past, present, and future. What does this book mean to you? And I'll get Baba and Mkuu to go first. What does this mean to you, not just as a person, but as a father, a grandfather, an elder in the community? What does this book mean to you?
Well, number one, it sets the stage for future works that I would like to do before I transition out of this plane, this physical existence. It's simply a motivation to continue to try to do as much of the quality work that I can, and this was like a good start for me. But more importantly, I have older children, and I have 2 grandkids, and it's important for those, especially my grandchildren. I have 2 daughters, one 40, one 30. But my 2 grandkids, 16 and 7, the boy being the oldest, the girl being the youngest, they are going to benefit from this information. They are not privy to or have the opportunity to be around anybody who is learned in African civilization and African philosophy and African centeredness. And we need to be careful when we use the word African centeredness, because that could mean a whole lot of things to different people. But for the sake of us, in this conference call, we understand what African centeredness is. But I'm hoping that we don't want me and Brother Olatunji, and I'm pretty sure he can chime in after I get done my little spiel here. We chose to endeavor in getting away from preaching to the choir. Preaching to the choir means that the people who be on social media, the ones who we think are African centered,
or conscious,
or the people who think they're conscious and they're not, for a lot of different reasons. A lot of it because they have the lack of, well, they haven't worked. It's hard to say if somebody lacks anything if they don't understand what it is. So that's why this book is very important, for them to understand what true integrity is, to understand what true critical thought is all about. If they get the book and actually read it and study it, then they'll understand probably what it is, and then it's something that they can strive for, because it's within reach then, because it's not so complicated a thing to attain. However, to get back to preaching to the choir, we are, and I've asked Olatunji, maybe you brothers can help me out here. are we not probably 0.05% of the population, us so-called conscious people among the African civilization here on the, well, just here in the North American continent?
I studied the Nation of Gods and Earth in my late teens, early 20s, and I came to a point where I realized that, you know, we say we're 5%, and I would be like, we're 5% of the 5%,
right,
of that 5%.
Yeah, and I came to that conclusion too. I came to a 0.5 of a 1%. I don't think we're 1%. So we have such a vast and enormous job to do. We have to reach the masses who are never going to be exposed to this. And we got to stop preaching to the choir. We got to come out of our nests, our little silos, you know, talking to each other, you know, acting like we, you know, feeling good about each other, saying, yeah, you're right, man. Yeah, girl, you're right. We got to preach and teach the masses. And we're hoping that this book is like, you know how they have the hip hop community. They say they what is that when you go over and become popular with the white people? What is that word?
Crossover. They used to say back in the day, crossover.
Yeah. We're hoping that this work will cross over, obviously not to the Europeans, but cross over to the masses of Africans. They don't know that they're African people. That's how bad it is out here. Cross over to the Africans. They're starting to see now, because we're getting shot in the street. People are starting to wake up. They don't understand really yet what's going on, but they do know something's wrong. And I think people are going to start getting hungry for learning more about why we ended up where we're at. And that's why Taka Kilimanjaro's and Yara Anib's and the University of Kemet Press's work is so important. That will give them the information, the foundational information that they need to understand how we got to where we at. But where we at right now is important, and we want this book to help the individuals, the common folk, the common Africans who don't even know they need this information to have it, to make it available, make it accessible to them. That's my hope. That's what I hope this work does.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a phenomenal work. Obasi said earlier that, you know, this is a great piece of work for all ages. You know, I've said it myself. I shared it with my wife and our 9-year-old son reading it. I mean, you literally cover every topic that we discuss, and, you know, some of us foolishly debate about in our African circles. And I don't even know if we should say conscious community at all anymore, but just within our circles, you know, we go back and forth about these topics. So it's refreshing and wonderful to have a concise piece of work in this one book that covers every topic. And I wanted to just read real quick for Baba Olatunji from page 163. He said, "We would rather spend time claiming every other race and or group of people as being black, as if by doing so it will empower us. Claiming the Arabs were black. Claiming the Arabs won't empower us at all. Such claims only make us beholden to them, to their religion and their culture, and only empowers them against us. Why are we so intent on identifying with the people who do not look like us, who do not want to be us, and who have proven over the course of 1,400 years that they hate us?" And you're talking specifically about Arabs, but you know, we can take this and apply it to, you know, the Hebrew Israelites, the Moors, the indigenous. You know, we want to be rappers, we want to be entertainers, we want to be celebrities. We know where it comes from, but I want you, Baba Olatunji, to just give us your insight on where it comes from and how do we transcend beyond it.
Well, for me, it starts with removing the ignorance. We have to instill a unquestionable desire for wanting to know the truth, for wanting to know, as Brother Mkuu just said, how we got in this circumstance, and then coming up, because once we ask the question, well, how did we get in this circumstance? Then when we start to do that research, we will draw the conclusions of how we got in this situation. And it's through that process that we will also begin to realize what it will take for us to get out of this situation. And so that's why I said that, because, at one point I had converted to Islam early on. That's why I know so much about it. And when at the same time that I converted to Islam, I was also studying African history. So I never lost myself. And so eventually I was able to pull myself away from it as I got more and more to African history, as I began to see the facts. And so when we dealing with this issue, particularly when we start talking about religious beliefs, our dilemma is in the terms that we use. And so if we can get people to get to a process where they can begin to see that when they say, well, I believe, that they actually understand that just because you believe in something does not make it a fact. A case in point is, as children, being raised and living in the United States of America, overwhelmingly, most of us were raised to believe in Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. And so after we get about 10, 11 or so, somebody, our cousin or one of our homies, somebody told us Santa Claus didn't exist. And so we get to a point where we realize and we accept that as a fact, because we know it's a fact. Santa Claus did not exist. But we believed it with all our heart for at least, I would say most of us, at least that we were 10 years old. Some of us may have given it up earlier, but most of us learned that. And so I'm using it as an analogy to show that just because you believe that was true, it doesn't make it true. Evidence, documented evidence, facts, that's what makes something true. And once you are able to acknowledge that that's what is true, then you can move to the next level. And so studying our history, when we start to look at who our enemies are, there's a whole history out there that we, and I ain't even got to the current events. I'm just dealing with from an ancient standpoint. We've had essentially the same mortal enemy, collectively, a group of people collectively who've been hating us, going back to at least the beginning of the Common Era. So we can probably trace that back to before that, but on a serious level, at least from the beginning of the Common Era, of what they call AD time, we can look at and point to groups of people who have operated in a destructive manner to try to destroy us as a race of people through enslavement, through killing, through invasion of our homeland, the whole 9 yards, and the destruction of our civilization. And so we have to acknowledge that. And you can't do that as long as you're holding on to the vestiges of what they brought in and forced us to accept. And I'll just another analogy just to give you an understanding, and you know that I raised this in the book. When the Moors invaded Spain, most people don't realize the Moors were a conquered people. You see? And so they went in as Muslims. But but just 10 years prior to that, they weren't even Muslim because Islam didn't exist in Africa. And so when we start to have the discussions of history, one of the things, and me and Obasi talk about this all the time, and he knows I'm a stickler about this, timeline. And so, that was what was the making, and what I was saying is that we got the Arabs who have proven themselves to be our forefathers. And they've done so since they came into Africa in 640 AD, and probably even before that, but we can chronicle it on a huge level. There's all types of evidence to prove that. Not only did they come in and do stuff, but they snatched many of us and took us into, quote unquote, what they call Arab lands in Western Asia, into the area we now call, which was called Mesopotamia, which is now Iraq. in other areas. And so all this stuff has been documented. And so what I tried to do was to put it in a nice, concise, and neat way so people could see it. That's what I tried to do. I hope that I was successful in doing that, at least to some degree. Hoping that we can, once we deal with that, we can move away to the other stuff that we need to be doing, which is nation building. So that's what I tried to do.
Indeed, and we appreciate all the work that you did on this book. Again, I can't stress enough how profound it was from beginning to end. We're talking about critical thinking, we're talking about integrity, we're talking about the origin of all of these religions and traditions that have been imposed on us as African people, and what we must do to raise our awareness, as the book's title explains for us. We're going to wrap up. I want Boukman, he's been in the cut, to just ask some clarifying questions or some closing questions that may have come to you out of what you heard so far. Go ahead, Boukman. Unmute yourself, brother.
Yes, thank you, Brother Kwasi. First, so thank you to the elders about Olatunji, about sorry, let me make sure I get the Baba's name right.
It's Olatunji and Mkuu.
Mkuu. All right, thank you so much for allowing. I mean, the brother seems to have been dealing with the book, but I don't have the book. But thank you for giving us some personal, I'll call it personal demons, to use a Western word, a Western context. So I wanted to, I don't know if the book deals with that, but how do you, I don't know if you elders wrote about it or if you have suggestion about, because I know Young talks about it, the so-called shadow work, like dealing with your inner demon, like doing psychological work on yourself to deal with those things, so you can see clearer, have more clarity of thoughts and so forth. So does the book addresses that, or do you have a book that addresses that for us, or do you have any suggestions about that?
Yeah, very very good question, and thanks for being on the panel. Hopefully we'll be able to build some more in the future.
Most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I guess your last. I'll start with your last question. Where can you go to to source the information that you need to try to purge these so-called inner demons? And of course, that obviously is much more complicated than it sounds. But I think a very good start would be Ma'at, the book Ma'at by University of Kemet Press. That is going to give you a sense of, it's going to give you a feeling of solace, serenity. It's going to actually get you to a state of meditation, and you're not even going to realize it as you do your daily readings. And I suggest that you do a daily reading out of that book obviously every day. That's a good start to get your your emotional and psychological thoughts in order. Now, obviously, those thoughts and the programming has to be replaced by something that's more African, more conscious, more centered. So this is where we need to understand, our origins, where we came from, looking at our, our proud history, and then of course looking at the bad stuff too as well. The invasions, the conquering by other populations that came in, pretty much is, taking everything with the good and the bad. So Olatunji had mentioned it earlier that they enforce their will on conquering civilizations. That's the population. That's what they do. They take it over, and they enforce their will and their philosophies on that conquered people. Take your pick. You know, the European, Christianity, the Arabs, Islam. You know, that's what happened to us. And until we understand how those thought processes became as dominant as they are in our culture, you know, the culture of going to church, the culture of going to the mosque, being so loyal to these things, because basically that's the kind of people that we are. You know, if we can change the dynamic and the concept, how much can we get done if we are loyal to an African-centered worldview, a Pan-African worldview, you know? And to take it even further, if we attach ourselves to the concept of a traditional African political institution. Now that's the end game. You know, we got a long way to go before we get there. A traditional African political institution that takes into effect, like I said before, the cosmology stuff that Dr. Fakao talks about, Dr. Akoto talks about in nation building, Tu Nwala talks about in his Igbo philosophy. You know, there you go. That's the nation building. And Dr. Tu Nwala, who has a book on Igbo philosophy. We have a tendency, I hope I'm not jumping around too much, but we have a tendency to leapfrog over the basic building blocks of nation building to go right to nation building.
Right.
We can't do that. We can't jump into the backyard and say, you know what, I'm gonna put an addition on this house, and I'm not gonna get no plans. I'm not gonna consult any engineers. I'm not gonna look at the kind of soil that I got. I'm just gonna start building the shit. Mm-hmm. You know, because I got a book. I have a book, and it tells me basically what's in there, but I don't have a clue what I'm doing. You know, so
yep.
It's important that we purge ourselves, to answer your question, Brother Boukman, to purge ourselves of what I consider alien spiritual technology. Because that's what it is. It's science to these people. It has become a science to these people. Alien spiritual technology. And once we look at it as an alien technology, forget about the spiritual stuff. Take that word out. Just put in there alien technology. We're not supposed to have that inside of our souls, inside of our thought process. That was never meant to be inside the African mind. That concept is something that we never should have adopted because we were conquered. So we got a long way to go. And hopefully there'll be a few people who will latch on to the information. And just like Brother Jakar talks about all the time, planting the seed. And those seeds will germinate and become trees. And those trees will become forests. And then of course they'll have more seeds, and they'll have more forests, and they'll have more trees. So obviously this is going to be a generational process, brother. You know why I hate to say that? Because I'm not going to be allowed to see it. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But I've came to the very, very sober conclusion that I need to add to the discourse. So, and leave my mark as best as I can. And you brothers are the next people up. You guys are the next in line. You guys are going to be the elders, and you'll pick up where we left off at. But
as we like to say on the basketball court, they got the winners.
Yeah, you got the winners. brother Boukman, did I do okay? I probably was all over the place with that, man.
No, you did well, brother. Thank you so much. And I do have the book, Brother Quincy and Obasi and I, we've been studying it. We've been trying to do it on a regular basis, so I really enjoy the information in there.
Boukman, do you have my phone number?
What do you say, bro?
Do you have my phone number?
I do.
Okay, don't hesitate to reach out.
No. Sorry, Baba. I thought Brother Kwasi was asking the question. No, Baba, I don't have your
Don't hesitate to read it. You got anything you want to talk to me about? Most days I'm available, and if I'm not, you can always leave me a message. I usually get back to you usually that day. If not, definitely the next day. And always leave me a message if I'm not here.
I think
you know, give me your phone.
Brother Obasi, can you text it to us in our message chat? Because I don't have it out.
Yeah, because I'm always available, man. You know, I'm retired, so I don't work.
Make sure brother Boukman gets my number too, Obasi.
Yeah, we'll pass them around. We got a little chat. These are my two brothers right here.
Okay.
I probably talk to them, you know, every week more than anybody else.
Okay.
You know, as a team.
Yeah.
All right.
Baba Olatunji, can you go ahead and close us out, and also make sure that you state where we can purchase the book for anyone who does not have it. Give us some closing words, and also let us know where to purchase the book for anyone who does not have it yet.
Purchase the book at https:// capital RAG-TPS.myshopify.com.
All right.
The book is entitled, once again, Raising Awareness, Past, Present, Future. In terms of closing, to build on what Mkuu was saying, you know, that was the major reason we wrote the book, because we know we needed to leave our mark. We needed to say something. We needed to leave it for the next generation, because, as he said, in all probability, we won't be here to see the fruition of our efforts. But if we have done anything, we hope that we've laid a sure foundation from which y'all can build, y'all and other brothers and sisters such as yourselves can build upon and can pass on. I keep saying, I have children, I have grandchildren. My oldest child, believe it or not, is 50 years old. I have grandchildren and I have great-grandchildren. So I left this for them as well. And so I don't know which one of them is going to pick it up, you know, because, you know, we all got crazies in our family, even some of our children. But I've left it. I've sent some to my cousins. Some of my friends have purchased the book. So, you know, what we hope is that you know, that the discourse will now have to include raising awareness, past, present, future. I had a friend of mine who called me up raving about the book the other day. She's just as well studied as I am. She's been to Africa a bunch of times. She even got married in Kemet, and Dr. Ben performed the wedding ceremony for her.
Wow.
Her reading the part with the on Islam and on the Bible, she said, I only wish Dr. Ben was here to read it.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, that's what she said to me. So, I had another friend who read Mkuu's chapters and said that he writes like an author that y'all may not be very familiar with, a brother named Hakeem Madhubuti out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that Mku's writing was reminded him of Hakeem Madhubuti, who was a writer and poet.
Instructional.
Yeah. And so I made sure to tell Mku that, because these kinds of things, they motivate us to try to do better. As, I don't know if y'all know, but I got another book that may come out real soon. It's
right.
pretty much done. I'm just waiting on a couple of little things. It's going to be on it's entitled An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQ Agenda. I'm sorry, an African-centered response to LGBT. It's called An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQ organizations and their agenda, the conversation no one wants to have. So look for that. So that's going to be.
All right.
It's almost.
Bring the smoke. Bring the smoke.
I always tell him, I said, you're a bad man, mama.
Yeah,
I just lost 25% of my friend list. And then another 10% that I didn't know about that was in the closet.
It's the ones that you don't know about you're gonna lose.
I already know I'm gonna have family members mad at me, and everything, but it is what it is. My thing is, and I've always said this, is that I love black people, but I don't have to love what they do.
Absolutely.
And so when they out of order, they need to be called out that they out of order. And if they don't like being called out of order, that's not my issue. That's theirs. They got to wrestle. But I'm gonna call it how it is. One of the things one of the beauties of getting older is, and if y'all have had any experiences with like Grandma Betty and that type of stuff, they really don't give a damn what nobody says. They usually say what's on their mind. And I'm at the point where that's where the book is not mean-spirited by any stretch of the imagination. It's a matter-of-fact book. It deals with, again, just like as I was explaining earlier, it's based on all these different discussions and debates I've had on the issue. And so what I'm doing now is I've listened to all of their side of the argument. And here's the thing. Nobody has, aside from Faruti and the Genie, has actually done a whole book addressing them. And the major difference in the book that I'm doing is that my book is in response to addressing them since social media. So I've had an advantage of being able to see the different angles and narratives that they've been running over the last 10, 12 years. And so here is the African-centered response.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the book's going to be about.
Shane. Well, we appreciate that and all the work you do. Once again, raising awareness, past, present, and future. I'm sure Baba Mkuu is going to doctor up this video really good with the book. Do his thing. I appreciate Brother Boukman and Brother Obasi, and much respect and love and admiration to you, Baba Mkuu and Baba Olatunji.
Right back at you, my brother. Back at you. Y'all brothers, y'all the ones that inspire us, because we know that our work is not in vain. That's important,
Absolutely. This is something that we've been planning, Obasi and I, quietly. We talked about it weeks ago. We said we're going to do it, but what did I say the other day? I'm consistently inconsistent. So I'm working on it. My wife and our family, we're in the process of moving, so things have been really shaky lately. But I'm glad we were able to bring it together. And without further ado, I want to say Abibifahodie, peace and power, everyone to you, Shay and Baba Mkuu. We look forward to the finished product. Again, raising awareness, past, present, and future. Go ahead and get your copy today.
Do I.
Abibifahodie.
Abibifahodie.